Welcome to the Monday Minute of the Hunt Backcountry podcast. These are shorter and more informal episodes where we answer listener questions. I'm remote, wrapping up a family vacation. Steve, you're getting ready to head out and have some fun with the Born and Raised guys the next couple of days. As I feel like we've been saying every week, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can definitely hear it. You don't sound near the audio quality as normal. Sounds like you're in the bathroom or something.
Looking sure I'm not in the bathroom. Yeah, I'm just on AirPods and not the fancy podcast mic this morning. Golf tournament was this weekend. How did that go, Steve?
Yeah, that was Friday. It went fantastic. So the second annual Backcountry Invitational, it kind of flew under the radar because almost every single team that did it last year wanted to do it again this year, and we never really did like a live registration and didn't really talk about it a whole lot. But the tournament went off just absolutely fantastic. I got to be a participant this year instead of sitting at one of the holes, and I was doing research for how to improve on the next year. Um, but we had a lot of fun, and yeah, it's just a blast. It was a really cool time. So continuing to all I could think about the whole day was like, how can we involve more people in this? Because it's you're just limited to 144 golfers. But I think the idea
Yeah.
is maybe turn it into a 2 day event next year where there's you can at least double the amount of golfers. So go to 288 with doing like a morning 36 teams and then an afternoon 36 teams. And then we take the top 36 between those 72 teams and they golf again the next day. So just kind of add to the competition, add to the environment, make it more fun. Um, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. We had a blast. Jake crushed the organization of it. Like last year, I got really busy and he took it over and definitely it was like his first time doing a big event, and then he learned a lot from it. And this year just went incredibly. I mean, last year went smooth. This year went incredibly smooth. Everything was dialed and organized and just seamless.
Other updates we mentioned last week that the Outdoor Vitals clothing, there was a rock slide thread we linked to. We kind of talked a little bit about timeline. And again, we are having Brigham from Outdoor Vitals on the podcast here next week, I believe. We're recording it and we'll get it up pretty quick. He let me know that there is a landing page now. So if you guys have heard about the Outdoor Vitals clothing or want to hear about it as more information is formally released, and also get a 10% off discount, there is a landing page for that. So check out the link in the show description. If you go sign up there just into your email, you'll get updates. And when the pre-orders open, you'll be able to do that and also get a 10% discount, which, as we've mentioned, Steve, the pricing already is going to be pretty great at full. So getting 10% off is going to
Yeah.
be cool as well.
Mm. Awesome. Yeah, I've continued to wear the final samples of the pants and mid layer, and they've just been fantastic. There's also a sun hoodie that's not part of the initial launch that I've been testing. That's freaking awesome. Been really happy with that. Everything's just turned out fantastic.
Also this month, just to get through all the stuff upcoming and ongoing, the garage sale, the warehouse, open house for EXO, for SNS, and then other companies like Night Force and Argali and some others are going to be there as well. That's Friday, June 20th at EXO HQ. Going to be from 4 to roughly 8 p.m. And again, we're asking you guys if you were in the area or plan on coming in for that. So please go RSVP just so we can plan food and all other details there. So once again, link in the description for that, dates, times, who's going to be there, what's going on, and also RSVP if you can make it. That'd be great. Um, and then yeah, just more content coming as we've said outside the podcast. We got more videos releasing. We're kind of doing a small backpack hunting basics, some kind of basically quick tips that we shot in the field. So there's more coming there as well, in addition to the podcast. So just as I usually mention, if you only get the podcast, you're missing out on some of that content. Um, Best place to make sure you get all updates is just sign up for our EXO Insider email list. So do that if you are interested in getting all that content. And once again, I'll leave a link for that as well. To get to questions for this week, Steve, definitely noticing just a trend, I think, of what's current, where people's heads are at. There's quite a bit on just training, guys getting out with their packs, doing summer hikes, getting ready for hunting season. This first one came through from Brian. He says, "Do you have any suggestions or recommendations on how to load the K4 frame with weight for training?" He said, "Initially, I packed a plate," he's talking about a weight plate, "in the main bag with blankets around it. But I found that after a few miles, it slid down to the bottom of the pack." He said, "I'm attaching a couple of pictures on how I've done it so far, but I'm concerned I might be putting unnecessary stress on the components, particularly as I begin to increase the weight." And then Brian sent me a few pictures. The weight plate he's mentioned is unique. It's not like your standard weight plate from the gym. It's not a barbell weight plate. He had a specific weight plate from a company called Ruck. It's a 30-pound plate and it's an inch and a half thick and then shaped in a rectangle that's kind of meant for their rucking backpacks, Ruck. Um, and so he's just asking about loading it in our system. I obviously helped him out. We also have a video that's a loading weight for training with K4. Again, I'll leave a link to that. Steve, we were talking before we hit record. You forgot you recorded that video. And it's still super helpful. It shows loading a sandbag. It shows a couple options like just the frame with the crib, loading in the bag. Um, so that video is its own thing. Go check it out. But you were actually mentioning that's not the way that for you personally, you've been loading weight recently for training hikes. So aside from those resources that people can check out, just walk us through verbally, explain how you load your pack to go on a weighted training hike.
Well, basically, we're using weighted blankets, and that started with the showroom packs. Same deal as this guy. Like anything you could load up would be kind of fine for a hike, but when we were going to trade shows or pack that's in the showroom, I need something that just stayed nice and loaded tight all the time. And I think it was my wife who got me a weighted blanket for like Father's Day one year or something like that. And I don't know how it ended up in a backpack, but I put it in a backpack as weight one time. And I was like, this thing's freaking awesome, and that kind of evolved into us doing it in all the packs. You can just jump on Amazon and order. You can get pretty much the 25 they're 25-pound weighted blankets, and I think we like they're $40, maybe $60, somewhere in there. They're not super expensive. Obviously, you're not at all concerned about the quality of the blanket. You just need the weight. But what's nice about that versus like a regular blanket is they're not really going to compress. So once you put them down inside the pack, they pretty much just kind of stay in place. And so if you did, uh, the other thing I think that could work would be like a really heavy, sleeping bag, like a flannel Coleman sleeping bag. You could probably go to Walmart and get something super cheap there, and that would have some kind of density to it. So I put that in the pack, and then I kind of open up the blanket so I can get weights in the middle of it. And then I just have a dumbbell set in my garage, and I just grab, all right, that blanket's 25 pounds. So if I want to, with the pack, just say 5 pounds, so I'm at 30. If I want to get up to 50, I just throw a 20-pound dumbbell in there, close up the blanket, zip up the pack, and off I go. And there's zero wear and tear on the pack at all. That works great. And then for years, I did the sandbag, which I guess this video that I don't remember doing is what we did. And what the sandbag's nice because you can just strap it right to the frame. You can take the bag off the frame and not have any wear and tear on the bag whatsoever at all, which is obviously nice. Um, but it's harder to adjust the weight. And what I liked about this dumbbell with a weighted blanket is it takes 30 seconds to swap out that 20-pound dumbbell for a 40-pound dumbbell or a 5-pound dumbbell. I mean, it was just really easy for me to adjust the weight. So I've started doing that. Definitely a lot more intentional. It was always just hike with 60, 70 pounds, the same pounds as every single hike I did all summer long, which is fine. But I like the ability to, like, all right, today I'm going to do a boatload of lunges on this hike. So I'm going to drop down a little bit lighter, down to like 30 pounds. All right, today it's long, steep, heavy hike. All right, I want to jump this up to 70 pounds, 80 pounds. It makes it just a lot easier to adjust. But you could do the same thing with different sandbags as well. That certainly would exist of just have a lighter one and a heavier one. Lots of ways to do it, but the plate, like putting metal plates in there, is the last thing I want you to do for sure.
Yeah, even as you mentioned dumbbell, they're the rubber coated dumbbells.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Um, you can use the cast ones. Obviously, if you do, I have some cast ones. I'll just wrap them in a towel or something like that. You definitely want to avoid any imperfections on whether it's a weight plate that's cast or one of those dumbbells. They can just rub and cause abrasion over time. So if you don't have the rubber coated option, wrap it in a towel would be a good way to go. And then, yeah, sand works. I mean, we have so many options that are so cheap. Water softener, salt, bags of dog food. There's kind of countless options where you don't really have to buy anything specialized. That, as you said, Steve, the weighted blanket is a good option, a little bit of investment there. But I think it gives you a lot of flexibility long term, especially if
Yeah.
you happen to have some weights sitting around the garage as well.
It reminded me of the best weight ever to simulate boned out meat is you take one of our dry bags, put it in the pack, and fill it full of water, and then roll up that top nice and tight and seal it. But that actually works fantastic. It's just a lot. I did that a few times, and it's just hard to like transport that pack and not have it leak and things like that. Leak out the top of it, get into a trailhead. But definitely a good workout.
Well, on a similar topic, John wrote in, he says, when you're doing training hikes, do you wear hunting boots or mix it up with running shoes or trail running shoes? He said, I'm adding rucking into my regular training program and will probably do most of my early summer rucks on pavement in my hilly neighborhood with a K4 and wrapped bricks in the curb load panel. So obviously, Steve, for you, compared to most people, you won't wear hunting boots, period. So that certainly translates into your training, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess to answer his question, if I'm finding a pair of boots then that are gonna work and fit me, be comfortable, then I'm absolutely training in them like 1000%. But once, like you with your Hanwag Alverstones, once you've got a pair, you like them, they're broke in, don't like save those things. Like those boots
Yeah.
have a lifespan. Don't put extra miles on them that's not directly related to hunting. Like they work for you. You don't need to be messing with it. But when you are like, hey, I just got a new pair of boots. We're actually going to do this video with the Born and Raised guys this week, where we take like brand new pair of boots and like how I would break them in, how I would kind of dial them in with sock and insole and get them fitting as best as possible. But once you have that established, then no, yeah, don't. I would say mix it up, maybe. I don't know.
Mm.
Because if you're just hiking with a stiff boot, you're you're not using your foot muscles, you're not using your ankle muscles. I mean, they really just shut that all off, right? So it just goes from calf, puts a lot of strain on your knee, and your hamstrings and quads.
Yeah.
But that's also how you're. I mean, I don't know. You could argue either case there. That's also how you're hunting, so you should probably do some hiking with that. But I would generally, for me personally, said I'm wearing lighter, more flexible shoes. All 99.9% of my training hikes are just done in my trail running shoes. Until I get, if we do the sheep hike that we've talked about, I can do that. I gotta treat that like it's a hunt. Like I've got to have the
Mhm.
shoe dialed in. I can't wear like an ultra temp or something like that where it's real sloppy and it would just kill your feet.
And I liked this specificity in John's question where he talked about, he said, most of my early summer rucks will be on pavement in my hilly neighborhood. I think that's definitely a place where me personally, I would be wearing shoes and not hunting boots, in part because, as you said, I know what works for me, yes. But even if I were testing hunting boots or I'm evaluating a new boot, which happens, I try to do that on trails or even preferably off trail and not on pavement in the neighborhood. In
Yeah.
part because it's going to wear that boot faster, but in all reality, because it's just not a good test of evaluating the boot. Um, Hiking in your neighborhood, regardless of kind of how hilly it is, at the end of the day, it's still a street. Like the grade's going to be the grade. You're not going to have side hill. You're not going to have weird angles. Everything's going to be smoothed out for you, even on a hilly paved climb. And so I just don't think it's a great way to test a boot. So when I hear John's question, he says I'm doing most of his training rucks in the neighborhood. I'd be wearing shoes. I would also say purposely try to get on a trail or try to get off trail, try to get out of the neighborhood, not only for this footwear aspect of if you're evaluating footwear, but just for the training aspect of it. As we said many times, like find a ditch, go side hilling, do something. So yeah, from a pure fitness perspective, getting a bunch of miles in your hilly neighborhood's great, but definitely try and make sure you're intentional with getting outside that context as well.
Yeah. I would say if that's something you're doing consistently all summer long in your hunting boots, on walking on pavement, hunting boots, if you go back to my footwear video I did last year, I mean, 99% of them are not designed at all with any cushioning in mind and are entirely reliant on the insole to do that. And so you're going to put a lot more stress on your joints if you're hiking with a weighted pack in hunting boots that have there's no shock absorption. Every time you step down, it's like direct impact on that heel, transfers up to your knee. You're just going to cause issues. So that's where a running shoe that's going to have a lot more, cushion, shock absorption is probably going to be a lot better for you. But yeah, to your point, that depending on where you're hunting, if you're we always just assume the worst case scenario, right? Like you're going on
Hmm.
a high mountain, you're say sheep or goat or high country deer or something like that. That's very steep, very rugged, lots of side hill, lots of straight up, lots of straight down. Walking the neighborhood gets you like 20% there. It's certainly better than doing nothing, but yeah, the if that neighborhood has little water ditches on the side, just a little 8-inch ledge for the water not to run up on the sidewalk, walk right on the edge of that so your foot's at like a 45-degree angle and do that for half the hike at least, because that's actually going to be a lot better simulation of being out there hunting than just walking on a flat sidewalk street.
This whole topic and question relates to another one that came through from Stephen. And again, all these are super current. We're hitting these training and wrecking questions because that's what you guys are asking, and it obviously makes sense with the time of year as guys are getting ready for hunting season. But he says in CrossFit, they have equivalents for cardio machines. So they basically say 250 meters on a certain machine may be equal to doing 15 calories on an assault bike, which may be equal to do 200 meters on a row. So, Stephen, I don't CrossFit. I don't technically CrossFit, but I know what he's talking about. They're basically just saying that if you have a rower or an assault bike or a treadmill or whatever, here are some ways to do this certain amount of work, regardless of what basically machine you have. So it looks different, but they're trying to say, do this amount of work on either of these machines, and then here's how you do that. So Steven's asking, have you guys found any equivalents to this idea for hiking with a pack? He says, I'm thinking something like doing a flat ground 1 mile hike with 60 pounds could be equal to do a 1 mile hike up with 500 feet of vertical, but only carrying 30 pounds or something along those lines. He says, I'm going to be testing this over the summer for myself, but I wondered if you guys had any thoughts. Steve, I think at a really base level, one thing you could do is just talk about the time, right? So you could say 1 mile flat with 60 pounds. Maybe that does equal, I don't know, 1 mile that has 500 feet of vertical gain, but only with 30 pounds. And you would say, hey, with a similar amount of effort or perceived effort, I could do both of those things in 20 minutes, just making up stuff for round numbers. So I think you could for any person find some sort of equivalent of, more or less weight, more or less grade, and then how you can do those things. What I will say though, there's going to be, in my opinion and experience, almost zero equivalent on what that is actually doing to you from a training stimulus perspective. I don't think you can add weight to your pack to compensate for elevation gain or loss, period. I don't think they're remotely equivalent and that you can do one to make up for the other, if that makes sense. You just flat out try and avoid flat ground, period, right? So maybe you can't answer this question.
Yeah, if it's gonna be, I've got one hike out by my house. It's like you go 3 miles and it's like really, it's on this ridge top, and I think you only do like 700 feet. So I'll say if I'm feeling lazy, or the time that's a really sandy trail and I can do it when it's been raining, and so that probably historically that's the most often I'm using that trail when the other trails are muddy. Then I'm just doing a lot of lunges, and just doing other things, knowing that the hike itself is not going to do much for me. Um, yeah, you really got to. I mean, you've obviously adapted well. You're in Missouri. It's pretty flat. It's hard for you to find hills close to your home. So you're lots of box steps ups, lots of lunges. You find a short little hill that's like half, 10 minutes from your house that's like 300 feet, but you just do it over and over and over and over and over again, right?
Yep,
So you gotta get creative. Just hiking flat is not going to simulate a mountain hunt. Just period. Yeah, you just can't. Everything he said is good, right? Like, oh, like it's flat, so I'm going to make the weight heavier. Yeah, that's good, but it's still not going to do what you need. But it just, I don't know. It's tough. Depends on your fitness level. Where are you at? What are you going to try and go do? So that anything's like, don't. I'm saying hiking flat's not going to quite do it. Like, but that's certainly 1,000 times better than, oh, I don't have a hill to hike, so I'm just going to sit on the couch and not do anything, right?
yep,
I would just say if you're like, you live somewhere where it's flat, you got a premium. I don't know. You're going to Alaska. You're going on a sheep hunt. You're coming out west and you do a high country mule deer hunt. Then yes, hike with a loaded pack, but then also you're going to have to mix in box step ups and lunges and be dynamic and use just walking that flat grounds. If that's all you did and you were religious about it, you're still going to be sore as heck on day 2, day 3 of that hunt. But again, 1,000 times better than throwing in the towel and sitting on the couch.
for sure. And if all you truly have access to is flatter ground, um, yeah, things like the garage workout, which I've shared, I think even last week I shared it, I can share it again, are great. But if you want to get outside and move and cover some ground, but it is flat, one of the things in that free training program that Atomic Athlete shared with us, and I'll leave a link to it, is a tire drag or some sort of sled drag or a weighted drag. And that is great training for flat ground.
I got
And I
stupid,
would,
dude. So I did the tire drag yesterday. I had some old snow tires, and I've been meaning to like put a U-bolt through them and start working doing the sled drag on with my knees.
yeah,
And so I hook it up, and I made a custom EXO hip belt with like an extra long webbing strap. So it's actually pretty sweet. And so I pull around the yard, and then my son's like, he's 6. He's like, I want to try, Dad. And we go right to the little concrete pad because I know it was like on the grass, it was hard for me to pull. It's like, there's no way, but on the pavement, it's pretty easy. Like, you might be able to pull it across the concrete. So he gets it, and I mean, sure enough, dude, he's like just all his strength, all his might to get like from 10 feet across the pavement. And he gets to the edge of the grass and it kind of stops. He's just pulling and pulling and pulling. And then he flips around and he's trying to drag it. And nothing. And then dude, he backs up right to the tire and he thinks he's gonna run and sprint and pull the tire. Dude, and I'm
oh
like,
my gosh.
as I see it happening, and it just stopped. Like the waist belt's like up on his chest, and just like full on, just pulls him flat on his back, and he's like, oh, just laying on the ground, like, Dad, what happened? That hurt.
Oh man,
Dude, it was so comedy. Oh, I
that's
was
rough.
dying laughing.
Yeah.
Uh, but yes, sled drag's a great tool. In fact, when you come out here in July, we're going to do the tire drag all the way from my house down to the road, and it's a ass kicker. Yeah,
Yeah, I bet.
yeah,
But yeah, that's what I was going to say was if you truly have flat ground, I would lean towards that direction. A tire drag or sled drag, that free training program I mentioned, not only talks about why to do that, how to do that, but also shows you there's a link on how to build the setup, which is very easy. But if you just want to see an example, it's in there. So I would lean more towards maybe a combination of a lighter pack, but pulling a sled or a tire, like pulling some weight for resistance, more than I would just say, yeah, just keep adding weight to make up for flat ground. It's just a different stimulus. So that would be something I would check out for sure.
yeah.
A final quick question that came through recently after seeing um, Steve, the video where you loaded your pack for a multi-day hunt, and then I had a recent video on loading my pack for a day hunt. Jeff wrote in and he said, a quick question regarding the videos you guys shared recently with gear from your bear hunt. I noticed that in the video and in the podcast discussions, you don't appear to be carrying any type of first aid kit. Do you usually run your trips without packing any first aid gear? I did hear Steve mention Luco tape and ibuprofen. So that's a good question, Jeff. I'm sharing this not because I would at all say do what we do, but rather as an excuse to point to some really good resources on this topic that we've shared in the past. So we have had some experts, some people who actually know what they're talking about, which is neither you nor I, Steve, on things that would be good to have for backcountry hunting from a first aid perspective. So I'll leave links to those. Basically, this is an example, Steve, where our quote unquote kit, if you want to call it that, is extremely minimal, and is probably not recommended. But one thing to keep in mind on this topic is that your knowledge has to match or exceed your supplies. So you could put me in a wilderness setting with everything I would quote unquote need to survive any injury or treat or do, like trauma care to some extent. But I could have all the best stuff. I don't have the knowledge on what to do, how to do it, when to make certain decisions, etc. So, from my perspective, the gap in my liability is not what I do or don't have with me, but it's what I do or don't know. It's a knowledge issue, not a equipment issue, basically. Um, so all that said to say, both you and I, Steve, we don't really have a first aid kit. We do have some very basic items thrown in a stash pocket um, to patch ourselves up a little bit, essentially.
Yeah, man. Really basic. I've got super glue in there, which if you got a good cut, you could glue back together. I do have some quick clot, like a little tiny package of it that I don't even know how to use. Imagine you tear open the package and you just, someone had stuck a broadhead into their thigh or something like that. Um, but I remember doing one with, I mean, you'd have to be medically trained and have a 10-pound kit to like, if you want to just be that guy who's like, just, oh, I've got every situation possibly covered out here, like a
Yeah.
military medic. It's literally band-aids and leukotape and I got the quick clot and super glue and oof, that's about it, man. Bunch of ibuprofen. Yeah. So we did a podcast years ago and it's just like if it's so serious that it's that serious, you're probably SOL. Um, and I do think things are different now with InReach, right? Uh, it's I don't know. I guess my kit didn't change before InReach, but I'm definitely feel safer out there. Like if anything that happens that I'm going to be able to hike out, but with a little bit of stuff I got with me, I'm going to be able to patch up and get out. And then anything that's more serious than that, you're pushing the SOS button. And hopefully, certainly down here in the lower 48, within 2 hours, you've got help.
Yeah, the podcast and the article, which has a great little reference PDF as well. I think it'd be honestly smart to maybe print this reference PDF, laminate it, and put it in your kit. It covers some acronyms. There's one that's called March and Pause. So it talks about March is like massive bleeding, airway, respiration, circulation, head and hypothermia, and it talks very quickly about, hey, here's what to look for, here's what to do, here's what you may need for each of those scenarios. Um, this was a podcast, an article that we put together. It was, looks like 2023 with with a physician who not only works in the emergency room, but has also worked in the field, and he's a hunter. So he kind of gets the context. Jesse Mix is his name. He gets the context of what we're doing, and he tailored all of his like recommendations to that. So it is a phenomenal resource that not only you guys should go check out, it's something that in all reality I should probably listen to once a year, to take things away from it and to evaluate what I'm taking into the field with me as well. And obviously there are, if you look at this as a topic that's I don't want to say that you're interested in, but you want to learn about, which most of us should, more of us should, including myself. There's wilderness first aid courses. There is a lot of information out there. There's courses you can take. So don't look to us as a resource for it. Go find those good resources. Um, Steve, you and I, in many cases, like we're just like the listeners. We need to learn and get brushed up and all this stuff as well. But there's definitely some things we can point you in the direction of for that. So hopefully that's good, guys. It sounds like a lot of you guys are out there training and loading packs up and getting the miles on, which is great. If you have any questions for us, want to stay up to date on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We have some really cool episodes coming, with guys like Nate Simmons. We've got more listener stories. There's a lot of great stuff coming on the podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in. And in terms of Q&A, thank you for sending those questions in. Just send that into podcast@exomontgear.com via email, and appreciate you guys doing that. And we'll talk to you soon.